The icy calm broke down. Adela Pingsford used language that sent the artist instinctively a few feet nearer to the ox. He picked up a pea stick and flung it with some determination against the animal's mottled flank. The ox gazed with concentrated inquiry at the stick thrower. Adela gazed with equal concentration and more obvious hostility at the same focus. As the beast neither lowered its head nor stamped its feet, Ashley ventured on another javelin exercise with another pea stick. The ox seemed to realize at once that it was to go, and strode swiftly up the garden. It gave a hurried, final pluck at the bed where the chrysanthemums had been, and strode swiftly up the garden. Ashley ran to head it towards the gate, but only succeeded in quickening its pace from a walk to a heavy trot. With an air of inquiry, but with no real hesitation, it crossed the tiny strip of turf that was the lawn, and pushed its way through the open French window into the morning room. Some chrysanthemums and other autumn plants stood about the room in vases, and the animal resumed its browsing operations. All the same, Ashley fancied that the beginnings of a hunted look had come into its eyes, a look that counselled respect. He discontinued his attempt to interfere with its choice of surrounding.
"Mr. Ashley,"
said Adela in a shaking voice,
"I asked you to drive that beast out of my garden, but I did not ask you to drive it into my house. If I must have it anywhere on the premises, I prefer the garden to the morning room."
"Cattle drives are not in my line," said Ashley. "If I remember correctly, I told you so at the outset."
"I quite agree,"
retorted the lady.
"Painting pretty pictures of pretty little cows is what you're suited for. Perhaps you'd like to do a nice sketch of that ox making itself at home in my morning room."
This time it seemed as if the worm had turned. Ashley began striding away.
"Where are you going?"
screamed Adela. "To fetch implements," was the answer.
"Implements? I won't have you use a lasso. The room will be wrecked if there's a struggle."
But the artist marched out of the garden. In a couple of minutes he returned, laden with easel, sketching stool, and painting materials.
"Do you mean to say that you're going to sit quietly down and paint that brute while it's destroying my morning room?"
gasped Adela. "It was your suggestion," said Ashley, setting his canvas in position.
"I forbid it. I absolutely forbid it,"
stormed Adela. "I don't see what standing you have in the matter," said the artist. "You can hardly pretend that it's your ox, even by adoption."
"You seem to forget that it's in my morning room, eating my flowers,"
came the raging retort. "You seem to forget that the cook has neuralgia," said Ashley. "She may be just dozing off into a merciful sleep, and your outcry will waken her. Consideration for others should be the guiding principle of people in our lives."
"The man is mad!"
exclaimed Adela tragically. A moment later, it was Adela herself who appeared to go mad. The ox had finished the vase flowers and appeared to be thinking of leaving its rather restricted quarters. Ashley noticed its restlessness and promptly flung it some bunches of Virginia creeper leaves as a bait to continue the sitting.
"I shall go to the public library and get them to telephone for the police," announced
Adela, and, raging audibly, she departed. Some minutes later, the ox, awakening probably to the suspicion that oil cake and chopped mangold was waiting for it in some appointed buyer, stepped with much precaution out of the morning room, stared with grave inquiry at the no longer obtrusive and pea-stick-throwing human, and then lumbered heavily but swiftly out of the garden. Ashley packed up his tools and followed the animal's example.